Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to CWEIC's first activity of 2022 and the first of a very strong program building towards the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham in July this year. 2022 is a truly important year for the Commonwealth, with both the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting and the Commonwealth Games, as well as Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee celebrating her 70 years of service to the nation and to the wider Commonwealth. And we are delighted to be partnering with the UK Department for International Trade to deliver a series of virtual roundtables as the Queen's Baton relay travels across the Commonwealth. We hope that these will provide an entertaining and symbolic start to the year, as well as enable us to gain valuable insights into the global business agenda. I think we'd all agree that the last 2 years have been challenging for all countries across the Commonwealth. But we feel that these engagements, these roundtables, can help restart and reinvigorate existing Commonwealth business relationships and create the opportunities to forge new ones. In an ideal world, we would have been with you in person, but we think that the end is in sight. At least we are coming up with solutions that enable us to live with COVID-19, and we hope that we'll be able to gather again soon. The Birmingham 2022 Queen's Baton Relay is a wonderful opportunity to utilise the convening power of sport and to leverage the Commonwealth advantage, as we call it, to promote new trading opportunities between the West Midlands region and the wider Commonwealth. A region of the UK that is home to some 180,000 members of the Indian diaspora. I recall in 2018 when Prime Minister Modi came to London for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, and there was a special reception with the Queen at Buckingham Palace. It was a long-awaited visit that underlined the close relationship between our two countries and the incredible value of the Commonwealth family. It is well documented that it is 21% cheaper to do business between Commonwealth countries. This Commonwealth advantage, as we call it, is an underutilised resource and one we intend to highlight in the lead into the Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games. Today, we focus on India, the Commonwealth's largest nation, as I call it, the engine room of the Commonwealth, and a critical driver of Commonwealth trade and investment. One of the most frequent requests we get at CWEIC is companies, businesses, and other governments asking for support in cracking India. And with the country expected to become the third largest consumer market by 2030, unsurprisingly, there are challenges. And we hope to address some of these today because India is the prize that most companies and countries would like to be able to, in some way, participate in. We are focusing today on one of the key strengths of the West Midlands region and the UK, future mobility. I will leave it to my colleagues to tell you more about the region's strengths, but it is clearly an area with potential for new, strong partnerships to form, particularly in the area of tech. Before I hand over to my colleagues, most of you know a little bit about CWEIC, but for those of you who don't, we are the Commonwealth's official business arm. We are a not-for-profit commercial membership organisation with a mandate from Commonwealth Heads of Government to promote trade and investment across the 54 nations of the Commonwealth. We convene the Commonwealth Business Forum every 2 years rather, at Chogham, and the Commonwealth Games Business Forum every 4 years. Outside of these major events, we run trade delegations, missions, and bespoke business programs. We are partnering with DIT for this event, and we are very proud to be working alongside them to deliver what I consider one of the most important discussions of the year. We are very pleased to have two of CWEIC's strategic partners joining this session today, Royal Mail, who have been transporting the Queen's Baton across the Commonwealth, and Southampton, who are bidding to become the UK City of Culture in 2025, and Lulu Group, who are an extraordinary organisation, as Mr. Al-Hef just said this morning, who are working to import fresh produce from across the Commonwealth to service their vast chain of hypermarkets, also operating in a variety of Commonwealth countries. We are delighted also this morning to be joined by Rhiannon Harries, the Deputy Trade Commissioner for South Asia, who has kindly agreed to chair this discussion. Rhiannon took up the post in July 2018, and the role brings together the leadership of UK trade promotion, trade policy, economics and finance. Before I hand over to Rhiannon, just a little bit of housekeeping. We will start with Rhiannon's introduction, followed by a couple of brief videos. Then we will call on each of you to briefly introduce yourselves and your companies. Please try to keep these introductions brief as we have a lot of content to cover today. Then we move to the sector discussion. Each of you have been shared the panel notes with the topics of discussion and asked to prepare 2-minute commentaries on each. And this will be followed by a more open discussion. If you would like to contribute to the discussion, please raise your hand to attract the chair's attention using the chat feature. Finally, I would like to ask you to keep your cameras on during the meeting, but please mute yourselves when you are not speaking. The CWEIC team will be on hand throughout and afterwards to facilitate connections and meetings if you would like to follow up with your fellow participants. Please do not hesitate to be in touch with us if there are any areas of particular interest. Now over to you, Rhiannon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. It's a pleasure to be here today to chair this exciting discussion, timed to celebrate the Queen's Baton relay arriving in India and in advance of the Commonwealth Games held this summer in Birmingham. Moreover, it's especially timely as I'm joining you straight from having been with the Secretary of State for International Trade on her visit to Delhi, which I'll share more about shortly. The Queen's Baton relay in India this week is taking in the cities of Delhi, Bhubaneswar and Bengaluru. However, its journey in India is part of a much larger journey across the 72 nations and countries of the Commonwealth. The relay began on the 7th of October with Her Majesty the Queen placing her message to the Commonwealth into the Baton. The Baton is now on its 294-day-long journey with the intention that it will ignite hope, solidarity and collaboration as it connects communities, embraces unique cultures and shares inspirational stories. The Department for International Trade, in partnership with the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council, are delivering this and a number of other business roundtables during the Queen's Baton relay as part of the Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games Business and Tourism Programme. The programme has been designed to attract more investment, trade, visitors, events, businesses and students to Birmingham, the West Midlands and the UK. Having grown up in the West Midlands, this is a mission close to my heart personally. As the host country of the Games, we want to take this once-in-a-generation opportunity to use the global profile generated by the Games to showcase the wealth of opportunities and experiences available in the region and the UK. While the Queen's Baton relay will visit every one of the nations and territories within the Commonwealth, we're hosting these small and select roundtables with only a limited number of key priority markets, where India is one of them. As Sam has already said, India is the Commonwealth's largest nation, a vital component of Commonwealth trade and investment. And of course, India has a long-standing and cherished relationship with the UK. So the UK-India relationship is already strong and getting stronger. During a virtual summit last May, Prime Ministers Johnson and Modi agreed a 2030 roadmap, which provides a framework for UK-India relations across health, climate, trade, education, science and technology, and defence over the coming decade. The Prime Ministers also launched an enhanced trade partnership, confirming a shared intent to pursue free trade agreement negotiations with a view to doubling UK-India trade by 2030. As I referenced earlier, the Right Honourable Anne-Marie Trevelyan, Secretary of State for International Trade, has been in Delhi for a 2-day visit to launch those FTA negotiations with her Indian counterpart. So the starting gun has been officially fired. I witnessed that just an hour or so ago. And both nations are keen to discuss a comprehensive range of issues, from green trade to the removal of market access barriers. The future mobility and automotive sector is one which would benefit greatly from an FTA. We have heard the feedback from industry on this, and it will clearly be an area of focus for our negotiations. By way of example, to put some figures on the UK-India trading relationship, in the 2020 to 2021 financial year, business services grew by 23%, medicinal and pharmaceutical products by 33%, and inorganic chemicals grew an astonishing 250%. In fact, according to Barclays, products flying the British flag are more likely to be purchased in India than in any other country in the world. This occurred at a time when both India and the UK faced severe COVID restrictions, and it gives me hope the next financial year will show even more positive growth. On the investment side, Britain is the third largest destination for investment from India, and according to Grant Thornton, Indian companies employ more than 110,000 people in the UK. So the benefits of this collaboration for both sides are clear: new jobs, economic growth, and new avenues to co-create and co-innovate. This is why Britain and India could and should be doing so much more together. And I know from hearing the ministers speak earlier, that is their ambition, firmly held. I'm looking forward to a fruitful discussion on our focus sector of future mobility. The West Midlands has a well-known specialism in this area, and the sector has been identified by the UK government as a strategic priority for growth. Following COP26 and the sure and steady shift around the world to clean growth, it's clear that transport is a vital area where rapid innovation will result in cleaner and greener ways to travel in the next decade. The UK and West Midlands in particular have significant strengths in this area, from having a number of original equipment manufacturers through to being the home of highly integrated supply chains in rail, automotive, and aerospace. It's encouraging to hear about some of the collaborations between the UK and India which have developed in the area already, and I look forward to hearing about more opportunities for potential collaboration. The DIT India network operates across 9 posts in the country, with colleagues working across all areas of our trade and investment relationship. This puts the UK in a special position, being able to forge new exciting business relationships across different states. On future mobility specifically, I'm encouraged to hear that our footprint in places like Pune, Bengaluru, and Chennai means we're already working with a number of exciting new ventures in the electric vehicle and battery space. I'm also aware we're only at the beginning of this journey, and I look forward to it going from strength to strength in the coming years. These business roundtables are only one element of a wider programme of events and activities aligned with the Games. Colleagues and partners will be delivering their own events and missions to showcase the West Midlands and the UK, but we will all come together during the Games for a programme of events at UK House in Birmingham. I do hope that some of you participating in this roundtable will have the opportunity to join some of the events at UK House and experience in person all that the West Midlands has to offer. Now, before we move to discussion, I would like to show 2 short videos. The first is a message about the Games and the Business and Tourism programme from Minister Mike Freer MP, who is the Minister for Exports at the Department for International Trade. The second demonstrates some of what the West Midlands region, as host of the Games, has to offer. Thank you, and I would invite those playing the video to please go ahead. Hopefully that will come any second.
In the summer of 2022, Birmingham will host the Commonwealth Games, the biggest sporting event the West Midlands has ever seen. And the Games are breaking records before they have even begun. They will be the fastest Games, delivered in 4.5 years rather than 7. The first ever carbon neutral Games, and the biggest Games, with the largest ever para-sports programme and more women's medals than men's for the first time. This will be the West Midlands moment. 1.5 billion people across the globe will tune in. creating a once-in-a-generation opportunity to showcase the region to new audiences. By working across the public and private sector, our business and tourism programme will enable the West Midlands to capitalise on the long-term economic opportunities generated by this global exposure. It will boost exports and attract inward investment, giving the region the shot in the arm required to recover from the pandemic. This programme is already delivering and is anticipated to create up to 900 jobs in the West Midlands, but its benefits will spread further. Another 500 jobs are expected to be created across the UK, and almost £1 billion of new overseas investment into the UK is forecast, whilst an estimated £12 million in extra visitor spend will provide much needed support to a tourism sector that has suffered globally throughout the pandemic. Through the Business and Tourism Programme, work with our Commonwealth partners will focus on 4 key sectors where the UK is already a world leader: data-driven healthcare, creative technologies, future mobility, and a modern business services sector. The programme will also support sectors including e-commerce, education, food and drink, and the sports economy. These games will bring so many nations together, allowing us all to show that we are open for business, open to partnerships, and ready to be at the forefront of global trade. By harnessing the opportunities the Games will bring, we will deliver economic growth and jobs of the future to the UK and the Commonwealth. And we hope that by working together, we can build this mutual prosperity for our countries. I do hope you all enjoy these prestigious Games, and I very much look forward to welcoming you to the West Midlands in 2022.
Thank you, and we can go straight into the second video.
Let's start from the heart. The heart of the UK, yes. But a heart of passion and pride too. From there we connect. We build. We become more than the sum of our parts. Our history is filled with bright ideas. Ideas that together have changed hearts, minds, and lives. We're still at it. Thinking differently and openly. Finding a common ground where tomorrow's technologies can grow and thrive. Making something of ourselves through new skills and good old hard work. And when we make our mark, the impact is felt far and wide. The race has started, and we're up and running. Things are changing around here, accelerating, shifting. We're on this journey together, each of us with our own story. Big ambitions and masses of potential. You can see dazzling talent everywhere you look, along with the well-honed skills to pull off something special. It's time to take centre stage, to explore stories that might just surprise and move you. Time to embrace experiences that delight and lift you. We're getting everyone in one place, our place, uniting cultures and contrasting voices. Join us, together, creating a wall of sound and an explosion of colour. So exciting, you can taste it. One region, one community, one thriving international home. The West Midlands.
Thank you. Well, I hope that's got you excited for the Games, as well as the business relationships and friendships that can be forged around them. Please remember there are members of our DIT team on this call who are keen to connect with you and build closer relationships in the months ahead. I'd like to now ask each of our participants to briefly introduce themselves and their company. I'll turn first to Mr. Mohammed Altaf, Director, Lulu Group International.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Mohammed Altaf. I'm Director of Lulu Group International. And West Midlands and Birmingham especially is very close to my heart. This is where we have started our first cautious entry into the UK. I wish I could not travel to Birmingham for the last 2 years because of the pandemic restrictions. I miss Birmingham. I miss your curry houses, your Baltis. This is a wonderful region. It has done very well for us. We started with setting up a very small smart manufacturing and export distribution center in Birmingham 6 years ago. And from there, this business has grown over the years. We were the recipients of the Queen's Award for the best international exporter. Last year, we got the #1 from the Birmingham Chamber of Commerce for global trade. So this region has done very well for our business. We have opened our first dedicated, purpose-built, state-of-the-art distribution center there now. It's a new building. It's a carbon neutral building in the distribution business. And it is now acting as our European headquarters. And this hub in Midlands work as a link between all the producers, farmers in the UK and the rest of the Europe, and our consumers in various parts of the world. And we undertake wide range of different functions there, including sourcing. We also do a lot of forensic testing there, coding, consolidation, certification, and a lot of R&D with a lot of research institutes there now. Birmingham is an excellent connectivity. It has an industrial history, as you have just showcased. And it is also, its proximity to air and port connectivity is excellent. And above all, it has a large, we have access to a large pool of innovations and research institutes there. We are quite happy there. And Birmingham is also acting as in our company, our Birmingham and UK operation is leading in our net zero ambitions. We have a lot of partnership work in there in the Birmingham. Thank you. Thank you for this presentation, Dr. Smith.
Thank you very much. That's fantastic to hear. And you're doing our job for us promoting Birmingham, which is all the better. So I'm going to turn next to Mr. Mahesh Babu, CEO of Switch Mobility.
Thank you, Excellency. My name is Mahesh Babu. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Switch Global, where we have a factory in Leeds making zero carbon mobility. I also head the Chief Executive Officer of India. We have a headquartered in Chennai. Our aim is to make democratizing net zero emissions to public. So we have about 250 electric buses, including the London double-deckers on electric running. And we look forward to work with both the Indian as well as the UK team to create something valuable for both the countries. And we have been looking at partnerships on R&D, manufacturing. We are leveraging cost structures from India and innovation from UK, amalgamating them and creating value for both the societies in UK and in India. Thank you for the opportunity for being part of all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Babu. Next, I'll turn to Mr. Venkatesh Raman Prasad, partner, JSA Law.
Many thanks. I'm Venkatesh, and I'm a partner at JSA from the corporate practice group of JSA. JSA is a national law firm in India with over 350 professionals and operates out of almost 7 cities. Of course, pandemic has also ensured that we do so virtually effectively while delivering services to our client. The practice of JSA has always been organized, which is facing the industry, and we have always given a lot of attention to the industry needs, and hence it is service line and practice area oriented. In doing so, we have had the opportunity of engaging with the thought leaders, the market participants, government institutions, multilateral and bilateral institutions, as part of think tanks, policy groups, etc. We have always been known for cutting edge work in the automotive, energy sectors, and especially the renewable energy, the clean tech, and the climate change initiative. Thank you very much for having us participate in this discussion, and looking forward to an engagement with the other speakers and also your participants. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, may I ask Mr. Ravin Merchandani, Executive Chairman, Ador Powertron, to introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Rhiannon. My name is Ravin Merchandani, and I'm the director of a group called Ador in India. We are 115 years old, and our business operations span Germany, India, and Australia. My business is focused on the road, on mobility, on road safety, as well as zero emission mobility. So we are working with the Highways England on distracted driving technology, the first technology implemented for identifying people who are using their mobile phones whilst driving. You might have read about it. And we also have launched India's first made in India, made for the world, DC fast chargers. So these are, we decided to do that through the lockdown, powered through the lockdown when we had nothing better to do, to develop a new product line. And these will be manufactured in Germany and also in Connecticut, but before the end of this year as well. Thank you very much for including me in this discussion. And it's really great to see so many eminent people on this panel.
Thank you. And I'm glad to hear lockdown was a very productive one for your company. And finally on this side, Mr. Naveen Munjal, Managing Director, Hero Electric.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure, and also a pleasure to be talking about West Midlands. So I actually did my internship in Land Rover way back in the 90s in Longbridge and Solihull. So they've got very strong roots. In fact, my daughter, who's now looking at going and studying in UK, is going to be in West Midlands as well later this year. So it's an area which is very, very interesting for us. I have very fond memories of that area. Now, besides that, in my workspace, I head up Hero Electric, which is the largest and the oldest electric vehicle company in India for the two-wheelers. That's where we believe the huge amount of disruption or the huge amount of change that's going to come in is going to be in the two-wheeler space in electric mobility in India. 80% of the vehicles on the road are two-wheelers. And we've already got about 450,000 vehicles on the road in the last about 14 odd years of being in the space. So India is absolutely set for the electric revolution. There is absolutely no doubt about it. We are going to move in that direction for various reasons, whether it is moving towards net zero or the environment or the climate change, etc. And of course, beyond all of that, there is economic sense also for a customer. So I'm a great believer of electric. I've been in this space for a long time. And I look forward to hearing the panel ahead. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Munjal. And you're clearly already a great example of the living bridge, not just yourself, but your family. I wish your daughter success in her studies. So turning now to our participants from the West Midlands region and the UK, may I first ask Mr. Keith Budden, Head of Business Development at Cenex, to introduce himself.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting us along to this fascinating webinar this morning. Cenex was established in 2005 by the UK government and the automotive industry as the UK's premier independent, not-for-profit, low-carbon electric vehicle expert advisory organisation. We work in both providing expert advice and support to both the public and private sector. Delighted to have the Royal Mail on the call here. We provided the support and advice to help and assist the Royal Mail in decarbonising its fleet, both in its vehicles and trying to understand the most cost-effective and reliable way of charging its vehicles in their depots without having excessive costs on grid reinforcements. We currently advise the UK government on technical requirements for electric vehicle charging, and we run the National Charge Point Register. We are delighted to be based in the Midlands and have recently helped the West Midlands develop its first low emission vehicle policy and programme, which will be coming into force during the Commonwealth Games. We do work globally, and I'm delighted to be working with Niti Aayog in India, the National Institute for Transforming India, alongside support from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office in assisting India in its journey to electric mobility. Delighted to hear from Naveen from Hero, one of our companies we hold up as a delight in transforming two and three wheelers. Absolutely right, the two-wheeler market is absolutely essential for the majority of the planet we live on. We'd love to see more electric two and three wheelers in the West Midlands as well. On behalf of the UK government, we run the Low Carbon Vehicle event. This will be its 15th year. It is the major exhibition of UK innovation and technology. We'd love to see some examples of Indian technology there as well. I'll put some details in the chat later. It takes place in September at Millbrook. We'd love to see more Indian representatives there. Hopefully we'll all be able to travel in September. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, absolutely fingers crossed on travel for this year ahead. Next, please, Ms. Helen Bellamy Booth, Business Partner for Chief Commercial Officer, External Channels, Royal Mail.
Good morning. Thank you very much to CWIC for inviting Royal Mail to this amazing roundtable. I work for Nick Landon. I'm his lead on special projects. So currently, I've picked up the lead on the Queen's Baton, which we were approached about in the summer of last year to support on. And I'm also going to be talking about our green agenda with regards to what we're doing with our vehicles in particular. I'm going to put out there an outrageous claim. We've been green since the day we started in 1516 with horse-drawn carriages, and later with our postmen and women on foot. It's been a long time doing the deliveries in the greenest way possible until the invention of the motor car. So yeah, looking forward to sharing how we're doing and what our plans are.
Thank you. Next, please, Gemma Nichols, Commercial and Marketing Director, Southampton 2025.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here today with you all. Here in Southampton, we are bidding to become UK City of Culture in 2025, so working very hard currently to get our bid in. India is a location which is very key to us in terms of our positioning in the UK, but also as an international forward-thinking city. We have many links that are now rapidly developing with India, in particular those in Mumbai. So from our trade links, our education, culture, and most importantly, sport as well for the city. We're developing those links to ensure that we are connected more than ever. We have a huge South Asian diaspora in Southampton, and India is very, very well rooted in us as a location. So in terms of our links to the West Midlands, we've been working actively with the current UK City of Culture, Coventry. So we've been working with them to learn from them and also gain some best practice in how we as a location take forward our bid to become UK City of Culture in 2025. So thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be with you all.
Thank you very much. And last but by no means least, Mr. David Shepard, Specialist Advisor, Automotive and Future Mobility, West Midlands.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Shepard. I work for the Department for International Trade in the Midlands. My role essentially is to support Midlands mobility companies in their overseas trade efforts. Very much taking on board what Mr. Babu said in his introduction, that it's very much around capitalising, I suppose, on the technology development in the Midlands and aligning with the cost structure in India, and that's what we spend a lot of time doing is matching companies that together, as somebody else said earlier on, where the whole may be more than the sum of the parts. I'm very happy to see that colleagues from DIT in India, Avnish, Gautam, are participating this morning as well. And we work very, very closely together. But thrilled to be part of this and looking forward to the conversation later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now on to the core of why we're here, to discuss opportunities to increase trade and business partnerships between the West Midlands, wider UK and India around the future of mobility. Each of you have seen the discussion points, and we have asked you to prepare a 2-minute intervention to begin the session, and then we'll welcome response from the other panelists or participants on the roundtable. I would ask that you please keep your initial comments brief to allow that time for discussion. So going around our participants again, may I turn first to Mr. Mohammed Altaf.
Thank you. I think on the mobility solutions, logistics is also a very key part. I think most of the emphasis now happen to be in the transport and micro mobility and other, but I think for our industries and our own decarbonizing targets, logistics, heavy truck electrification of our fleet is prime importance, and we look forward for many more solutions coming out of this conference and all other cooperations moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. Mahesh Babu.
Thank you. I think I've already said that the mobility space is being disrupted globally substantially in the past 2 decades when compared to a century of incremental developments happening in the industry. I think between UK and India, I strongly believe as Switch, our main aim is to democratizing zero carbon mobility. Our vision is to be a global technology leader in providing zero carbon commercial mobility for products and solutions. So if you look at India, India is a very unique market. India has multi-modal transport from 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, 4-wheelers, personal and commercial, as well as mass transport, mass rapid transport like metros and the buses. So if you look at, as I earlier said, that we should look at cooperation between India and UK in their strength. For example, as I said, as Switch, we are setting up our R&D in Midlands. We are opening up a test center in Warwick, and we have a plant in Leeds. Similarly, in Chennai, we have a very strong software capabilities. India is a very strong in IT, and if you look at EV, we can leverage the strength of the Indian IT knowledge to build up IPRs around software and embedded system. If you put all of them, now we are, as we speak, setting up a plant in Spain. We are looking at Middle East. We are looking at South America jointly, taking the technology, working on the cost structure between India and the technology from UK. So we strongly believe that that if we impact the commercial mobility space, both in passenger as well as the delivery of goods, I think it will have a substantial impact in reducing the carbon emission mobility. And that's where we are focusing and looking forward in this forum to learn from all of you and share some of our experience in both the places. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll bring in next Mr. Keith Budden.
Thank you very much. I think firstly that the change that we are experiencing will happen quicker than most of us imagine. If I was here 5 years ago and told you that there were 0.6% of new vehicles sold in the UK that December 5 years ago, 0.6% were 100% electric. The sales in December this year were 25.6%. So we've gone from 0.6% 100% electric vehicles to 25.6% in 5 years. So the level of disruption, as well as the business opportunity that brings, is huge, and the time of change is rapid. I think with the 2- and 3-wheeler market, the time of change could be even quicker. So we could be looking at, in India, 50% of new 2-wheelers being 100% electric within 3 years. The transition will be quicker than most of us imagine. So the challenge that brings is how does our energy system manage that transition to enable those vehicles to be charged? We're already seeing that in the UK, where we're struggling with rapid charging equipment on motorways, where people are queuing up, they can't get a charge. There are challenges around data, some huge opportunities, and the work we're doing in India is specifically working with both state and national government, looking at how data from charge points can be provided directly to vehicles and to individuals so that they know that charge points are available, they know where they are, they know if they're working, they know how much they're going to pay. So enabling that interconnection between the energy system and the mobility system is critical. And the final point I want to leave with, if we want to get to net zero, if we have to get to net zero, which of course we do to prevent the dangerous impacts of climate change that are already happening, we have to move quickly. But we also have to realize that replacing one set of queuing vehicles with another set of queuing vehicles, one may be electric, one might have been petrol or diesel, does not solve the congestion problem, but it also will not solve the climate problem. We need to look at how we have more walking, more cycling, more active mobility, and a significant investment in public transport. So it's fantastic to have Switch here. Electric buses are much more important than electric cars. And I think the role of India with the FAME2 program, focusing in on 2- and 3-wheelers and buses, is exactly the right. We'd love to see more investment here in electric buses. And the final point is that Coventry will be one of the UK's first 100% electric bus cities. That investment is now taking place. So we will see Coventry in the West Midlands transition all its buses to electric. Hopefully there will be more in Birmingham for the Commonwealth Games. It's been a real battle to get electric buses on the roads of Birmingham for the Commonwealth Games. Hopefully that is now starting to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, the last time I was in Birmingham for the Cricket World Cup back in 2019, I saw some electric auto rickshaws doing the rounds, which was a particular novelty. I'll turn next to Ms. Helen Bellamy Booth, please.
Hello again, Helen Bellamy Booth, Royal Mail. We are required to deliver to 31 million addresses 6 days a week. We are the UK's largest on-foot delivery network with over 85,000 postmen and women. 80% of our parcels and mail are delivered on foot, so without a vehicle. And we also have introduced what we call a park and loop method. So we take large bulks of parcels and mail to an area, and from there the postmen and women take the deliveries out as well. We maintain currently a fleet of around 50,000 vehicles. There's always vehicles on and off the road, of course. We're currently operating 10 fully electric trains to transport mail and parcels across the UK from our network, and we are working continually to accelerate the transition of moving away from petrol, diesel vehicles to electric. We have several all-electric depots now in the UK. We launched the latest one at COP26 last year in Glasgow. So we are currently the lowest reported CO2 delivery company in the UK. So currently the challenge for us, as the gentleman before me mentioned, is the amount of charging, getting our hands on the amount of on the equipment we need for the charging points for our vehicles, but also the speed at which we can have or purchase electric vans. So those are our two challenges that we are working very hard to improve on. As soon as the vehicles are ready, we take them and they are straight out on the road. So that's our biggest challenge in the network, for our network at the moment, and something that we are constantly talking to new businesses about who are coming forward with the equipment. I know that there's a big factory just started for electric batteries in the north that we are talking to. But yeah, that's Royal Mail, and its endeavours to become 100% electric across our fleet.
Thank you. That's a challenge laid down there, and I hope some participants on the line might be able to help Royal Mail rise to that. Next, could I bring in, please, Mr. Venkatesh Prasad?
So purely from the point of view of opportunities, I think what India is witnessing right now is EV revolution. There is no two doubts about that. And when I say that, one of the key drivers for that EV revolution, so to speak, is India's commitment at COP26. We all know about the net zero commitment, which is going up to 2070. But there is a shorter commitment as well that India has done, that by 2030, it is going to raise its non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatt. It will meet 50% of its energy demands through renewables. It will reduce its carbon emission by 1 billion ton and reduce the carbon intensity in its economy by 45%. Now, what it has done is that India has also set very ambitious target. And when I said it, there is a revolution on the cards on the automotive side. India has set a very ambitious target of increasing the EV penetration to 80% for two-wheelers and three-wheelers, 70% for commercial vehicles, 30% for passenger vehicles, and almost 40% for buses, which effectively means that your manufacturing and supply chain is also going will need to be significantly ramped up to meet this EV challenge. In parallel, another revolution is taking shape, which is the charging network infrastructure. And that itself is a very humongous opportunity in creating that network. One, on the local infrastructure, the cities and the urban centers. And the second one is on the national highways. So National Highway Authority of India, which is a custodian for the national highway system, is rolling out a massive highway charging infrastructure program, has already rolled out, in fact. And so are the state governments ramping up that infrastructure. And the demand centers, the urban demand centers, there is a lot of collaborations. We are seeing number of transactions going on as we're speaking, in which different stakeholders involving oil and gas companies, discoms, private players, OEMs, they are all coming together and putting together these demand infrastructure in the cities, whether tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 cities. The industry friends talk about a learning phase in India today in the network infrastructure. This learning phase, I'm told, will pave way for the market expansion phase. And I think we are going to witness a humongous market expansion in the next 5 years to 8 years on the EV side of things. Even if we were to discount the government targets and bring it to a more rational or realistic level, the numbers are going to be, are you crazy levels. And which also means that the manufacturing ecosystem in India will get ramped up at a very different levels. For instance, government has come out with plethora of production-linked incentive schemes, and also the FAME2 incentives in play until 2024. So which all brings to the fact that there is going to be a humongous amount of economic activities, industry activities, M&A, financing, green financing, which is going to be the way in which I am seeing the entire sort of path, EV path leading to what we are calling the future of mobility. And let's not hide ourselves to the fact that India is also transitioning its ICE vehicles to reduce the carbon intensity by adopting alternate fuel. We are witnessing for the first time that they are intervening, the government is intervening and telling the industry, use biofuels, use hydrogen as an alternate source. So taking everything together, I think it's like a moment of change for the automotive setup, but also a moment of change for the manufacturing setup, as we're talking about it. And there will be incremental, as I said, opportunity, which will be as part of this entire challenges. There are going to be, different layers of challenges. As a practitioner, my focus and what I'm seeing is the uniformity of legislation, uniformity of policy, and the uniformity of approach between the federal government and the state governments, because India is a federal polity. And those two need to marry each other in order to ensure that there is no conflict that the businesses see. The thing that I'm seeing is a skill development issue. And India really need to skill up in order to meet the EV sort of ecosystem requirements. Other than that, there are technical challenges which I don't want to bore the audience right now, but this is going to be an issue from a grid stability perspective, as well as the EV gets ramped up. The Indian grids will also need to upgrade itself, to meet the requirements of the EV load. So I'll pause there and perhaps engage with the other participants.
Thank you. It's music to my ears hearing from you the opportunity and the trajectory this might go on. Having lived in the Delhi pollution for 3.5 years, it can't happen soon enough. But as you say, there's challenges on the road. Thank you for sharing that. May I ask next, Mr. Ravin Mirchandani?
Thanks very much, Rhiannon. I'm going to just underline everything everyone has said already. First up, what you've talked about Delhi pollution, I think the overwhelming emotion that you feel in India today is hope, because the air in the cities that we live in will clean up over the next decade as electric mobility and hydrogen mobility are implemented. However, I think the trajectory to that happening in India is going to be very different from what you have in the UK. And I want to talk about the living bridge already impacting mobility in India. First up, in India, there's 330 million vehicles registered on the road today, and 82% of those are two-wheelers. And so a majority of the decisions to convert from ICE to electric will be serviced by Naveen sitting here and by his factories over the next 10 years. But as Naveen and me have talked before, both of us believe, I think, that the present buying cycle of people buying two-wheelers or three-wheelers that are ICE technology, when those come up for change in the next 3 or 4 years, the automatic choice will be electric. And I think Keith made that point as well. A full 50% of vehicles being bought within this decade will be electric. The question will be, how does the capacity match? Because you need 10 to 15 million electric vehicles manufactured in India every year to be two-wheelers, in order to replace the entire fleet over the next 10 years. 8% of the 330 million vehicles are buses, and those are going to be serviced by Mahesh and his industry. And it's very exciting to see how that is going to evolve. In fact, if the government mandates that all public transportation intra-city needs to be electric within 5 or 6 years, that can happen incredibly quickly. The challenge there is not capacity at the moment. The challenge has been standards. For example, what standards to implement. A number of the early buses that came in have the GBT Chinese standard. It's very nice to see now that we're harmonizing with Europe, and Mahesh's company is leading that, and we're moving towards CCS2 and harmonizing to the electrical charge standard of Europe. The final big challenge I think that we'll have in India is safety. And by safety, I mean we have a lot of startups in the electric two-wheeler sector today. And the social media is filled with scooters catching fire because of unsafe battery packs, and the same is happening with rickshaws in Delhi. There's 1 million electric rickshaws in Delhi, 2 million in the neighboring state of Uttar Pradesh. Passengers are sitting on top of these battery packs, and I wouldn't be able to guarantee how many of them are safe. And so we need some level of standardization on safety of battery management, and that's going to be a trajectory where particularly the Midlands will be able to help. The Warwick Manufacturing Group is the world center of excellence on battery management, good customers of ours. And in fact, they've had a big impact on the Tata rollout of electric vehicles, because all of the Tata vehicles, all 8 of them, in fact, that are going to be converted to electric have been at the Lord Bhattacharya building in WMG under research and development since 2017, 2018. So there is a big impact that your region is already having in India. So finally, I'd like to say the big difference between the trajectory of the UK and India is going to be in the UK, you will see electric buses, trains, and cars, whilst in India, cars will follow last. It'll be electric scooters first, electric rickshaws, electric buses, and over the next 10 years, I think you have 2 more cycles of ICE procurements where cars will become the natural choice to be electric. Today's the early adopters, it's the adventurers who want to have it, but there's still a lot of frustration, not only with charging infrastructure, but just availability, reliability, and the things like that. I see that will change over the next 5 or 6 years. But overall, I think West Midlands in particular has a big role to play because of your battery and automotive expertise to be able to support, assist, advise India in the direction it will take. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this evolves, and looking forward to seeing greater participation again of the United Kingdom with a renewed focus beyond Europe towards countries like India and Australia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mirchandani. I have to confess that careering through Indian traffic on an auto, the safety of the battery pack was not something that crossed my mind, but you've given me an extra thing to think about now. Next, please, Mr. Munjal.
Thank you so much. Actually, I'm just so glad to hear all the points that have come across earlier. It makes life a lot easier for me. I would just like to add on that, just to say that when you look at mobility and you look at different forms of mobility, so there's going to be different stages for different forms. You've got the two-wheelers, the three-wheelers, cars, public transport, and commercial vehicles. All will take off at some point of time. But at the same time, two-wheelers is going to form the base of that pyramid. So when you look at things like drivetrains, batteries, and other technologies, IoT and smart connectivity and telematics, etc., the volume is actually going to come from the two-wheelers simply because of the large volume of two-wheelers on the road, and that's going to be converted. So earlier, what was actually a big push market from our side is now become a pull market from the customers. So what's happening right now is we are not able to fulfill that demand. So we've got more demand than what we are able to fulfill at this point. And this is, again, a problem, but it's a problem of a better kind than what we had earlier. That said, there are tremendous opportunities that exist even now. The supply chains are not robust enough in India at this point for electric mobility, for the volume that we're going to face, that we are going to get, the kind of volume that's going to convert. So the supply chain, there is opportunity, whether it's in the supply chains, it's opportunity in the telematics and drivetrains, and there's, of course, the batteries. There's a number of companies which have already filled in the PLI, that's a production linked incentive by the government for battery manufacturing. So we've got the FAME policy, what Venkat was talking about. We've got the FAME 2, which is now a good policy. On top of that, we've got numerous states which have got their own policies. A large part of them are still manufacturing-led, but some of them have come out with demand-led policies as well. So they are helping on top of the FAME policy. And then, of course, we've got the PLIs. We've got manufacturing, we've got the ACI, PLI, ACC, and we've got the chipset PLI, which the government has just announced a few weeks back. So the government, there is clear intent by the government for various reasons. One, of course, is the environment, is the importation of oil, and it's the foreign exchange that we actually lose from here. And another is the commitment towards climate change. And third is when we look at it from a pollution standpoint, we've got 12 of the 15 most polluted cities in the world being in India, and 5 of them being the NCR region, which is not a great feat to have. And certainly not when we've got COVID and we've got the PM 2.5 already beating at our lungs. So we have to convert to electric. And I agree with what Keith was saying, the conversion is going to be much faster. I don't know if you've seen an image of, this was, I think, New York, Fifth Avenue in 1910 and 1920 or somewhere thereabouts, where there was horse carriages, and suddenly how the whole thing switched to cars and no horse carriages at all. And we're actually going to see that kind of transition happening in India as well. So in the next couple of years, in the next decade or so, there is going to be tremendous, as I was saying, there's going to be tremendous opportunities which are going to come in. What you need for two-wheelers is a very basic but dense charging infrastructure for night charging. What you need for cars is a high-powered charging infrastructure, because most of the people are going to be charging the vehicles at night at home. And also, somebody was talking about, the power load grid, the load on the grid, etc. That for the near future is not going to be such a big problem, simply because the grid is designed for the peak load, which is during the day. And here we're going to be actually charging the vehicles at night, where the load on the grid actually dips. So it actually helps in balancing out the out the grid. So India, there is going to be a tremendous amount of opportunity that comes by. We are already seeing a shift that's happening, whether we look at it from a consumer perspective or we look at it from a B2B perspective. In B2B, the governments are pushing for the businesses to actually start transitioning towards electric. Some governments are more proactive than others in saying that, cut off dates by which time they want the B2B vehicles to be electric. And in a lot of other cases, they're just letting the market forces flow by. But I believe that whatever numbers that we're talking about here, the acceleration is going to be far faster than that once it starts, and it's already started. So we are on, as we call it, the hockey stick growth. There is going to be a tremendous amount of opportunity which exists. And there are going to be a number of partnerships which will come into play, whether it is for drivetrains, for technology, IoTs, and smart connectivity. No individual company is going to be able to go vertically down and do everything themselves. They will have to spread themselves horizontally rather than vertically. So that's it from my side. I'm very excited about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Munjal. Your excitement is certainly infectious. I'm feeling ever more excited hearing from each of you. And I also just feel this supply chain theme, which a number of you have talked about, is something our complementary economies should be able to solve. The Commerce Minister I was with earlier talks about complementary economies between the UK and India. And I know our Secretary of State shares that view, and also her passion for green, having had a very big role in COP26. It is exciting to think what we might be able to achieve together in this sector. So glad that we're forming these partnerships. Finally, could I please turn to Mr. Shepard?
Thank you very much. I must admit by now I'm in danger of violently agreeing with previous speakers, which is probably not a bad thing, I guess. I mean, the way I see it is that I'd very much agree with Keith, and it's well documented that the energy system is critical in the democratization that we've talked about earlier, in this sort of widening accessibility. I do think, though, that the industry has a lot to do. There's still a lot we can do. I mean, we talk a lot about the state of technology being in the sort of delivery phase now rather than development. But I mean, having said that, we still need to get to the stage where the business model for an electric vehicle competes without subsidies, without support with the ICE variant. And I think that's probably where we can help a lot with Midlands companies. I mean, I think what we see in the Midlands, and Mr. Merchandani, I think, alluded to WMG earlier on, was that the UK government has been very supportive of automotive R&D with the Advanced Propulsion Centre and so on. And what that means is that we've got lots of interesting companies with interesting technologies around sort of TRL levels 5 to 7, which I think are kind of ripe then for marrying with other businesses which can scale that up, which I think really is the potential for collaboration that we've talked about earlier on, and you know, that's what we're actively looking to do. I think also what's interesting as well is that you know, I started off in my career working in the automotive industry, but now that vertical has gone, if you like, in terms of, you know, we talk about mobility now, we talk about the vehicle and its environment rather than the vehicle per se. We talk about then the interaction between automotive and other means of transport, rail, aerospace, and so on. So these lines are very much blurring, you know, with cross-cutting themes of digitization and sustainability, but also we're seeing a lot of move towards vertical integration within the supply chain. So I think it's an absolutely fascinating time, and you know, to use that cliche, the paradigms that certainly I grew up on are shifting hugely. But equally, I think there's a lot to do, and I think this sort of collaboration between companies to maximize on their strengths is the way forward.
Thank you. A great note to conclude the initial thoughts on. Whilst I invite you to mull questions for each other and reactions, could I please just first ask all panelists to turn their cameras on so that we can take a quick screenshot for our social media. So if I could invite everyone to turn on their cameras. Lovely to see you all popping up. Great. So I'm just going to check with colleagues that they've got what they need on the photo. Is that all good? I will assume so.
Yeah, that's very good. Thank you.
Great. So thoughts, reactions from what you've heard there. I mean, otherwise I might pose a few questions myself. I think, oh, I see Keith has a physical hand up, which is very nice to see. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just not quick enough on the electronic hand. For me, I just pose really two questions I think that we see as a real opportunity, but a great challenge. The first one, And I have an electric car parked out on the side of the driveway. It spends 97% of the time not moving. It has a 73 kilowatt battery in it, so it has a fantastically large, expensive, valuable battery. So the real challenge is, how do we better share and use that mobility asset? How do we share and use that battery asset to help us decarbonize? And what are the business and value streams that can come from that? So utilizing that battery, it's not a car, it's a battery on wheels with a computer. So how do we use that battery to help us decarbonize? Similar with the motorcycles, they have smaller batteries, but many of them you'll be able to remove, take them into your house, charge up, but you can also use them for other functions. The car I have is a Korean one, has a vehicle to load, so I can plug electrical devices directly in it. I can also plug my house directly in it through vehicle to grid technology. So those bi-directional chargers, and we've been doing a lot of work in that area. So that's one area. How do we see the battery and the vehicle as part of an energy system, rather than just seeing it as a separate mobility product? And the other one is a big issue, which I think is the big elephant in the room that no one ever wants to talk about. It's always good to have someone from government on the call. The big issue for me is, how do we tax road users? Because if we move away from taxing fuel, that stops us paying for health, that stops us paying for all the other important things that we require government to raise tax for. So we have to move forward to some form of congestion mobility road user charge. That requires clever, reliable, accurate digital technologies that are in the vehicle. That is politically acceptable. The politically acceptable is a challenge, but we do have to move away from taxing fuel, because taxing electricity for mobility use differently than electricity for lighting your home is going to be really difficult, if not impossible. But we do need to raise tax, and we need to use that tax raising to also create policies that help us use roads more efficiently and effectively, but also equitably. So there's some real challenges there, and I think technology and Indian technology development can play a real role in helping us have new vehicles, whether they're 2, 3 or 4-wheelers, with the right type of technology in the vehicle, to enable us then to be able to raise taxation for government in a way that's fair, clear and transparent. And that is the real issue that will prevent the rollout of electric vehicles going forward.
Two fantastic questions there. I'm pleased to report I personally definitely do not have responsibility for road tax, but will of course be feeding back to colleagues in HMRC. So great questions there. The battery, how we make that an energy system and not just something that sits on the driveway, and the road tax and how we do that. And I know we've already got very different systems on that between the UK and India. So which panelists would like to respond? Mr. Babu, that's a virtual hand I see.
Thank you. I think nobody has talked about it, so probably I want to bring the elephant in the room, because you talked about trade, we talked about technology. One of the thought process I have strongly believe is each of the society are planning to use technology to improve the lives of the people and also solve some of the social issues like what we talked about, pollution in the country, in India, I'm talking about oil import. I strongly believe that UK has a very high R&D and technological strength. Like in Midlands, Oxford, Warwick, we are opening up R&D centers from Switch, and we are also looking at manufacturing there. I think when we partner between UK and India, I think we need to leverage each of these strengths. India is a very large country with a huge potential for a low cost structure for manufacturing. So like India is looking for R&D and technology for UK, UK should be open enough to look at manufacturing India and look at taking such products from India openly. That's how the trade will look balanced between the country, because we will strengthen. It's not about what UK and India do between them. It is what UK and India can do together to the world. That's what we have to see. How can we strengthen? How can we look at the strength of UK's technology? How can we look at the strength of India's cost structure? And how can we collaborate together and serve the world rather than be talking about only manufacturing and R&D? I think that's one of the input I would like to give during the trade talks. We should look at how to serve the world between us rather than be talking about trade between the countries.
Thanks. That's a really interesting and topical one, not least because our Secretary of State visited JCB India just yesterday morning, and that is a great success story of a UK-India collaboration that is exporting to the wider world from India. Great. We have another hand up, Mr. Venkatesh.
In fact, this is more of a question to the UK side, and I think as we are seeing, a number of issues getting sort of discussed on the EV side of things in India. One of the things that regularly is coming up is a data privacy issue, and to do with what is the learning that UK has on the data privacy issue, because technology is shaping in a way which it's quite dynamic. What kind of footprints the technology has in terms of accessing information about the rider's vehicle and the rider's information, it's fairly well understood from a technology side of things, but not really understood from a data privacy side of things. So my question was more from the UK side. We do have a general data privacy law, but is there any framework for a technology-led initiative, the IoT devices, for instance, that UK has a framework for,
Thank you. Another very topical one with India's data bill going through at the moment, and certainly I'm sure this is something that will be a matter of discussion in our free trade agreement negotiations, as data cuts across all the sectors. As you rightly point out, it is a sort of lifeblood of all industries. So getting that right for free trade will be really important for the UK, certainly. Lots of different questions posed there. Keith, I saw a good physical hand.
I can just quickly come back on the data question. There is an underlying challenge around data, primarily based on location-based data, and whom actually owns the data. I may own the vehicle, but I don't own the data that's being collected from that vehicle. That vehicle my vehicle happens to be Korean. I have an app. I agree instantly because I want to use the app so I can turn the heating and etc. on the vehicle before I get in it. But that vehicle has that integrated tracking in there, which enables me on my phone to know exactly where my vehicle is at any point in time. So any family member, I know exactly where my wife is traveling to at any point in time because the vehicle is tracking her movements. So there is some privacy issues there. How that then impacts if I was a taxi driver owner, I know where my vehicles are at any one point in time for business purposes with telematic data that would in most vehicles anyway. Where it's become a critical issue is some of the intermediary businesses. For example, we've been working with a major American-owned car rental business who want to access the data to understand how their vehicles are being used for their car rental business. They have to pay for supplementary tracking devices to be fitted, even though the vehicles they've purchased have that inbuilt in them, because the OEMs will not allow them to access the data for the vehicle that they own. So it's similar to the mobile phone, and that in general it needs to be tackled at a global level because these are global products and services. So it is access and understanding the data collection of the product that you own, similar to your mobile phone. So I think that if we can crack it for mobile phone tracking technologies, we can also track it for vehicles. Again, with the Royal Mail, they have tracking devices in all of their vehicles. The vehicles they're buying have it in already. They're unable to access that in terms of the OBD port and really understand the vehicle performance. So I think supplementary legislation is required so that the owner of the product has access and ownership of the data that their product is collecting. Otherwise, we are in a very challenging position where you've bought a product that's still taking information about you and then reselling that and using it for a whole variety of other purposes that you haven't necessarily consented to when you bought that product.
Absolutely a key debate there, and particularly when this data at a macro scale can give all sorts of useful insights, but you're right, poses questions on privacy. A challenge I think we will not solve amongst ourselves today, but other insights and thoughts on that topic welcome, as well as the earlier questions posed.
Just one other area on data. Sorry, phone turned off. One other area on data is data relating to charge points. Again, the UK has led the way in putting in legislation to require charge point operators in the public domain to provide dynamic, live, real-time data to the National Charge Point Register that's then made available to mapping devices. Without the right legislation in place, charge point owners and operators did not want that information to be made public on the grounds that it could affect their share price, because you can tell which charge points are being used more than others. And we're trying to control a network to prevent customers from utilizing other networks. So if you want to have a clear market working around charge point access, then the provision of a API-based data requirements is essential, and that probably needs to be based on legislation. I know that NITI Aayog are working on that at the moment. That needs to happen at a federal level as well as a state level, so that the driver needs to know where they are they working, and can they use those charge points? And that data has to come from all publicly available charge points, and that probably needs a legislative framework to enable that to happen.
Thank you. Any reactions from Indian participants on the line, or other thoughts on questions posed? If not, I may
maybe for Hero, it'd be good to understand your issues around battery swapping for motorcycles and standards for motorcycle battery swapping, because that doesn't quite exist yet. It's great to see Type 2 and CCS coming through as common standards, but the battery swapping technology standards, I think, will be critical for the take-up of motorcycles.
Please, Mr. Munjal.
Sure, so I'll address that one. So what happens is we've got three forms of charging that can happen. And I'm talking more about the two-wheelers here. One, of course, is a fixed battery, which a lot of companies have. So you've got to have the charging infrastructure to be able to charge the vehicles at night. And the second is a swapping infrastructure. Now, when you look at a swapping infrastructure, you have no ability to charge the vehicle at home. You have to go to a swapping station, because that's where the economics are going to lie, and that's where the warranties, etc., of that battery are going to come into play, since they do charge them under ideal conditions, which we may not necessarily charge them at home. In the absence of both of these, we've gone with the portable battery. So if you have a charge point, a charger at home, or a charge point at home, you can plug in your vehicle to charge. But should you not have that, you can take out the battery, take it up to your apartment, charge it, plug it back into the vehicle, and off you go again. So that's the easiest form of actually running the vehicle. But you do have limitations in so as to how big the battery can get in that case, because you've got to actually make the battery portable. So to talk about standardization of batteries, there is a consortium which is out there, which is not in India. We don't really have standardization of batteries at this point of time, and that's a very, very difficult one to actually come up with, because which standard do you really follow? Which companies' protocols do you really follow? And there is a consortium which is there, which is, I think, Yamaha and Honda and Piaggio, etc. There's 4 companies as a part of that consortium which are trying to standardize on the battery, this thing. I think this will eventually evolve over a period of time, because right now what we had 3 MOUs signed for battery swapping, just to give you a perspective. 3 MOUs signed, and the form factor of the batteries for all 3 of them were completely different from each other. Besides that, the technology, the BMS that went into all 3 of them would not talk to each other. And all the 3 companies were not willing to talk to each other on whose standards they should really use. So I believe, eventually at this point of time, it's too early on in the game to actually set standards in place, because to set standards would mean killing innovation in some form, shape or form, because it's still evolving at a very, very rapid pace. So I think what's going to happen is that companies themselves, there will be some kind of consolidation that happens, some kind of collaborations that happen. And that is where the standards are going to begin to get set till such time as the market matures a little bit more. At this point, it's a chicken and egg situation. Should you wait for the vehicles to come in before establishing the swapping stations, or should you establish the swapping stations, wait with the batteries for the vehicle population really to come up? At this point, the companies that we work with are waiting for the vehicles to come in before they install the number of charging stations that are going to be required, swapping stations that are going to be required. Even in a city, you can't put in 5 stations in a city like Delhi and say that, I've got a swapping network in place. You've got to have hundreds of them. The guy is not going to go beyond 1 or 2 or 3 kilometers of his home in order to go and swap a battery. It's got to be very close to where he is already. So that capex at this point is not getting done. And there is a tremendous amount of opportunity there, because whoever comes in first establishes that whole network of swapping stations is going to be the gold standard. We already seen that in Taiwan, for example. There was a company, Gogoro, set up that infrastructure. Now anybody who's following has to kind of go similar to what they've already done, because the gold standard's already set in that country. So here, there are challenges there. There is also a challenge here of the battery prices declining. So over a period of time, for example, the batteries which you were installed on day 1 versus what you're installing on day 500 or day 1000, how the deterioration of the battery is happening, and the prices would have already declined by then. So how is that going to pan out? So there are some challenges here. It's not without issues. But nevertheless, and we believe that all 3 models are going to coexist. It's going to be a charge at home fixed battery. It's going to be a swapping and portable batteries for different users. Different users will have different applications. So I think it's not going to be one answer for all. There are going to be 3 models which will work in parallel with each other in India.
Thank you, Mr. Manjal. I mean, I think it's really encouraging to hear that business-to-business partnerships already there, because, as you say, regulation keeping pace with such a fast innovating market is going to be a challenge. So I think that's a great thing to hear. And also, clearly, the gauntlet's laid down there for UK companies who want to get in investing in battery swapping stations. There's an opportunity I hope the UK might be able to help with there. Further reactions or questions? Otherwise, I'm going to pose one. So a sort of linked one to the supply chain challenge of kind of the different conditions essentially for the UK and India around cost, temperature ranges, duty cycles. Wonder if I might invite Mr. Babu perhaps to elaborate on some of that from the Indian perspective, and where there might be potential for complementary UK-India collaboration in that space.
Thank you. I think the important point, what is being discussed, is about different chemistries of batteries and how the climate is going to affect their safety, life, and maybe the performance. I think when we look at India, India is a tropical country. And India is wide. In fact, north of India is slightly different, south is slightly different, but typically many parts of India is a very tropical region. Temperatures will go close to sub-zero in some regions. Some regions it goes up to plus 49 to 50 degrees. Now, how do you treat the battery during these times, and how do the ecosystem is going to give a typical challenge? Because I have been in a company called Mahindra before I joined Switch, and we had about 350 million kilometers of electric mobility there, and here we have about 30-40 million kilometers. So I would say about 500 million kilometers of electric mobility, and the data has given a lot of insights on how do we manage battery and battery management system thermal in India. It's completely different from what's happening in UK. Because UK has a different challenge of sometimes heating, sometimes managing it efficiently, usage. And India actually has a much higher challenge than UK in terms of application, because you need to manage at a very high temperatures. Indian consumers sometimes don't charge regularly. So if they leave at, let's say, 25% charge and the temperature is actually at 50 degrees, do you drain the battery fully and save the battery on safety, or do you don't drain it and keep it and save the battery and take a chance on the temperature so that the life comes down? It's a very, very conflicting requirements, and hence it leads to a lot of innovation. That's what I would see. And that's what we have learned, our technical engineers have learned, and the art and science of managing the dilemma between what to do during these critical times. This helps on the digital twinning. That's why we talk about, even in Switch, digital twinning of the product, digital twinning of the cities, digital twinning of consumer behaviors. I think that digitization plays a very vital role, because ultimately through digitization, what we are talking about is a vehicle moving from maybe the same vehicle with the same software running in London and running in Delhi, will auto-recognize the city due to GPS and update the software and behaviors which will be climatically acclimatized to that city. So we have to use technology to give different solution to the customers, different solution to the application, but keep up the platform the same. That's what is our experience to handle different regions. I think engineers' digital twinning will really help to do all this. And over there, software can be done between the cities to manage. It's a technical challenge, but I think we have enough solutions in software and connectivity which can be handled intelligently between the two countries.
Thank you. And I'm conscious of time, but if I could just also bring in briefly Mr. Altaf on that question.
Well, I think, if we can, there is we see a lot of potential on all that, benefits of standardization. From my perspective, will be purely on an end user side. We are looking forward very excitingly for electrification of the larger vehicles, especially the commercial vehicles. This has become a major component of our decarbonization program globally in terms of our footprint reduction and other things. With my experience in the Midland companies, that they can come up with quite a lot of innovative solutions, and India will always have solutions to offer. I think to make that, it can accommodate a lot of other things and can do a lot of cost analysis, and it can give us an affordable solution for the future. I'm quite glad that one area that India has progressing quite well compared to many other countries today is in terms of focusing on green technologies and and net zero mobility solutions. So we hope we will benefit immensely, and as someone said, this can happen much faster than we expected, even in commercial vehicles, I believe.
Thank you. And Mr. Venkatesh, I see you have your hand up.
I just wanted to make a short point about the regulatory march in India. And I think I need to mention this point, that there is the testing arm, which is attached to the Ministry of Road and Surface Transport, which is the ARAI, Automotive Research Association of India, which maps out the automotive standards, both for the ICE vehicles as well as for the EVs. And they have committees, and they have come out with standards, for instance, for type approval certification for battery operated vehicles. So their main concern, apart from variety of parameters, is the health safety, and the safety point of view. And they are the certifying agency. So I think one of the engagement necessarily should be with ARAI, because they are the ones who need to engage with the counterpart in UK and see how some of these things are being dealt with in the UK and or European setup. And perhaps there needs to be that two-way process so that the standards can be framed in a more cohesive way, rather than being left for interpretation, because it all feeds at the end of the day into the consumer side of things as to how consumer sees it. Is there a gap in the regulation? Is there a gap in their rights, vis-a-vis something happens to the vehicle? So I think that's an important engagement that should be thought through.
I think that's a really helpful point. I know we already have a lot of government-to-government engagement on standards across different sectors. And I will ask my colleagues on the line to take away thinking about whether we could be doing more in this space, because you're right, it seems like a definite opportunity there. Well, we're out of time, so all it leaves me to say is a very, very big thank you to all participants for such an engaging and exciting discussion. Certainly I feel even more energized about the opportunities, particularly in the context of us having launched our FTA negotiations today. As I mentioned earlier, colleagues from the DIT network in India and the UK will follow up with you to stay connected. We hope that this is only the start of a conversation. We're starting it virtually, but I hope it will also include you physically visiting the UK, the West Midlands, during the games in Birmingham. And I can promise you the weather will be balmy compared to the summer we get in India. So I would really encourage you to take that opportunity and head to the UK this summer, and fingers firmly crossed that COVID and travel permits us to do that and have a more normal summer celebration UK side. So thank you all very, very much, and enjoy the rest of your days.
And a huge thank you as well, Rhiannon, for your excellent chairing of this session today.
A pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.